Over to the Courier Mail now, and the splash is democracy in action. Laziest government in decades, simply, and I quote, out of ideas. The Palaszczuk government has been accused of running out of ideas after presiding over the quietest legislative agenda this century and perhaps ever. Just 20 proposed new laws have been introduced by the government to state parliament so far this year, compared with an average of about 50 annually since the turn of the century. There are just 2 scheduled sitting weeks left in the year. The government ignored a request to explain itself when asked why yesterday, leaving political expert Paul Williams to muse it might just be the case of the government has ticked off a lot of its agenda. This is really interesting to me because I feel that Palaszczuk has come in she's now in the crosshairs for everything. And you know, notwithstanding that the government also had to work through really complex voluntary assisted dying laws in Queensland earlier this year. So that's a big chunk of legislation when you've only got one House of Parliament. Do you think it's a bit unfair? AP?
I'm a Queenslander originally.
You are,
and
indeed.
In Palaszczuk's defence, I will say that the Queensland had 3 State of Origin games this year. So I know that when there's a State of Origin happening, not much gets done. And when you've got the prospect of where those games are going to be played, you've got, you know, there's like easily a month and a half of the year there that's a complete write-off. Yeah. Throw in a couple of COVID lockdowns. And I think...
Throw in where you're going to put the wags and the families and which resorts.
Oh, well, exactly. There's that as well. But I honestly think that while it is a slight concern that they haven't pushed through very much legislation this year, I also think it's pretty unfair to compare it to other preceding years this century because there are some pretty special circumstances that they're having to deal with as well.
Yeah, indeed. Now, this was going to interest me, being the sand groper, and of course you being the banana bender. Bali, next on bubble list. A great piece by Stephen Drill on the front of the Courier. Bali has joined South Korea and Japan at the top of the federal government's post-COVID reopening wish list. Federal Tourism Minister Dan Tahan also confirmed cruise ships could be back cruising domestically by Christmas. Mr Tahan said that he was sure international travel would be back by 2022. And there's, and I quote, a keenness to see what Bali can do, what we can do with regards to Bali. Put the bintang on ice, we're coming home.
Well, if Bali wants us, that's the question. It's one thing for Australia to say we want to go to Bali, but they're being a bit fussy on who they let in because they're looking at Melbourne and thinking, oh, you guys have got a bit of COVID down there.
And they're looking at vaccination rates really carefully. I know that much. So,
they're looking at WA, probably thinking, no way. Sorry, fellas, you're not coming over. Those keep your bintang singlets in the closet.
God, mine are almost practically yellow, the fact they haven't seen so much sun. Now, we're just going to whip through a couple of quick ones. The Canberra Times net zero power play. Obviously, the nation's capital newspaper is all about net zero tomorrow, and Resource Minister Keith Pitt moving back into Cabinet, which is great for the Nats. Gold Coast Bulletin, foreign flights battle. Gold Coast Airport boss Chris Mills says the state reopening plan needs to be urgently adjusted, saying waiting to reopen overseas at 90% vaccinated must be an anomaly. Obviously, a airport CEO would definitely say that. Up to the NT News, no place like home quarantine. Mick Gunner launches self-ISO trial with strict conditions. And Eddie Betts, obviously he's now living up in the territory. He's getting helping hand. We're telling people to get vaccinated up in the territory, which is great.